So, Menwad, you're friends with my brother, and through him, we ended up becoming somewhat friends. I would say Vegas solidified
Mm,
that friendship a little
mm-hmm.
bit better,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
I'm curious, man. You are talking about this thing that I think is important and has a space in today's, you know, at least in American society, but we don't really see much of it. And I'd like you to just explain real quick what, in really simple terms, like what is it that you're trying to do?
So essentially, with like the podcast that I'm envisioning doing, it's essentially the purpose of it is to speak with different people at different stages of their career. So starting from the base being like college students and going ranging from like people at like my level in corporate, like at an analyst position type, for example, and then people in HR, and then switching over to off of the work side, switching over to like an education, people that are like career advisors, academic advisors, professors, deans, whatever different levels of people we can get. And it's essentially to help people that are in college and high school, for example, that are high school students going to college, like how to prepare for it, what to expect, and then people that are in college to know what resources they have to use in college. Because I was pretty well aware of it in college, but once I got to college, because I had to kind of learn through my own struggles at certain points, which was it's beneficial in its own right, but also kind of having that knowledge going in will I think have certain people already a step ahead. So it's to essentially help that because like I would interact with different people and it would blow my mind that there was people in school that were either unaware of like career fairs, for example, something that's pretty standard, or just unwilling to go to them, or not even necessarily unwilling that they just didn't want to go.
When you say in school, you're talking about college?
Yes, this is
Got
at
it.
college. So it's even more. It was more surprising because it's like, so what exactly do you want to do when you leave here? Like, do you want to just graduate and you just go bum around at home, or
I don't even know how I got here.
yeah?
Yeah.
So and because I think that's part of I think because there's people that complain about the education system, but I think once you're in there, if you utilize what you have, I think there will be some people that can have kind of have a change of tone on it because I can understand where some of those people are coming from, but I think once you're at the school and you ultimately leave there successful, but and that I mean you get your diploma, whatever it is you're studying, and then you have a job lined up, I feel like you're going to leave with a more favorable outlook. Like my college experience, I look at it very favorably because I went to the school I went to was like Ohio University. Most people outside the state don't even know what that is. Anytime I tell anyone where I went to school, they're like, "Oh yeah, Ohio State." I'm like, "No, there's no state. It's just Ohio University. Ohio State, different school." But even though it's kind of like a no-name school outside of the state, we had really good companies show up and have like Q&A type stuff, and then we had good career fairs where again good quality companies would come, and there was a lot of students that went. So it's not like I'm saying it was a ghost town in there, but at the same time there were people that just didn't go for whatever reason or were again just didn't know about it, which I honestly don't know how some people didn't know about it.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think that, because I know how it was for me at least when I was in high school and I had aspirations to go to
Mm-hmm.
college, I didn't really have a career path or even a subject in
Mm-hmm.
mind. I just kind of, oh, everybody else is going to
Mm-hmm.
college or everybody else is going to university. I,
Yeah.
I got to go there too. I mean, that never materialized for me, but I'm curious, like, how many percent of college students, at least first year college students, have that same mentality? And maybe it's a little bit of that thought process that we're seeing, where they're just kind of like willy nilly, taking this class, that class, and without a real goal, without an objective. Like, why are you here? Why are you at college right now?
Right.
Do you think that's
I,
contributing
I
or?
think that I could see that being a part of it because just for me, for example, I graduated high school. I went directly to college. I didn't go like I went directly to university. I didn't do community college. So my first semester, I went to Cal State Northridge, only one semester because I was like, I don't like this. Not the school itself. I'm like, I don't want to do school. And then so I was gonna stop going to school, but then I ended up deciding, fine, I'll do it. But I was like, I'm gonna do online because I was working at the time too. So if I knew if I did online, I'd be able to go from part time to full time because I was already offered like they approached me saying, look, if by any chance you end up having the flexibility to do full time, that option is there for you.
Right.
So at the time for me, I was like, I'd rather work than do school because I was enjoying what I was doing. I was working at a bank, and I felt like I could make my way up through there. But I was like, fine, I'll just do online in the meantime. So I did online, but I switched from, and at CSUN I was doing business management that first semester. But then I switched over to sports management because I've always been really big into sports. So that's something I could see myself doing, getting into that industry. So I switched on to that, and I did a year and a half online. Now that year and a half, I didn't do any sports management courses. It was still, that first 2 years is always your GE typically, like that type of stuff, your
Right,
general
yeah.
education,
Math and
the
English.
same, yeah, the
and-
stuff that most people take regardless of what you're in. For the most part, I'm sure there's some nuances.
Well, that's the whole point of going to community college before you
Knock that out,
transfer,
yeah.
right?
Because it's a cheaper option, and
Right,
you know,
of
whatever.
course.
So I finished my 2 years, and I finished my sophomore year, and I could have continued with that school, but at that point I evaluated things, and I was like, okay, I'm halfway done. My GEs are pretty much done. At this point, I'm going to start my upper division classes. It's convenient doing this online because I'm working, but at the same time, I'm having no interaction with anyone, like physically,
Right.
and even electronically, the interactions were limited. Barely spoke with my professors because everything was pretty straightforward for me. At least, this is the assignment, go do it. And I was like, okay, fine, that's it.
So, I mean, but again, we come back to that. So you knew kind of where you wanted to fit, right?
So,
Like you had the management,
yeah.
sort of like
So initially, I thought I was going to do sports. That's why I went to my school. My school sports management program for undergrad was number 2 in the country at the time when I had got admitted. So I was like, okay, since I want to go on campus, because my logic was, okay, I want to do on campus schooling now. So that way I have access to the career fairs, the networking opportunities, sit down and talk with a career advisor, sit down and talk with the professor in person, as opposed to doing these things electronically. So I started researching what are the best schools for sports management and for undergrad. So my school came up, I applied, got in, went there. But like 2 weeks into me being there, I was like, oh no, I don't want to do this. So I switched to
changed my mind.
finance. Yeah. Because I saw what a lot of the people were getting. So this is something else that I would want to do in this whole endeavor that I'm going into is make sure, because again, if it happens when you change it, it's not like end of the world
Yeah.
if you do.
Yeah, of course.
But whatever you're initially doing, whatever you pick, and even if you end up switching, whatever you're picking, do thorough research. Because I did all this on my own. I researched it. It's not like I blindly picked my degree, but I definitely didn't research it enough. Because I researched what schools were good for it, but I didn't research enough what are people being placed to when they graduate.
Right.
Because so for mine, most people were getting placed into like ticket sales, sponsorship sales, like corporate sales, stuff like that, like where you would sell to like a company selling box seats, stuff like that. I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. Because the way I looked at it, I'm like, I don't need such a specific degree to sell tickets, for example. At least I'm not like crapping on anyone that did do that.
I mean, you could
I'm
just
just saying for me,
buy a handful and sell them on the street, you know?
yeah, like they do outside here, right? So for me, I was like, that's not what I want to do. So I'm like, okay, let's pivot here. So I started thinking, I'm like, okay, what else? What do I like to do? So I thought back to what I was doing before I transferred, working at the bank. I was like, well, I enjoyed working at the bank. Like it was cool seeing what people were spending on or how they were how they were budgeting, all of that stuff. But I was like, I don't want to do financial planning per se. I don't want to help people with that because it was cool seeing it, but I'm like, I don't want to actually be face to face. At least at that point, that's not what I wanted to do. So like, okay, let me do finance. And then as I'm doing it, I'll learn more about what's in there and kind of go from there. So then I switched to finance and then I stuck with that. That's what I graduated with. But while in the program, again, through those interactions with my professors, the career fairs, class, and when professors talk about their experiences, like what they did before, where they worked, for example, how they got there, what they studied exactly, and how it helped them was beneficial for me and ultimately helped kind of me mold my way. So I wanted to and I'm not saying the way I did things that's the way to do it, but since it worked for me, if I share kind of how I did things, there's going to be pieces I would think people can pick apart and see what, based on them knowing themselves, okay, he did it this way, Me knowing how I operate, I think this is something that could work. This could something that could work, and then just pick it apart and apply to them. And then that's just my side of things. And then when I have different guests over whatever amount of time I do it, you can just pick things apart from, because I might be talking with someone, I'm like, I probably wouldn't do it that way, but if it worked for you, cool.
Right.
So it's just to really have people and it doesn't even necessarily have to be only high school, college students. Even if you're, again, like entry level or even at any stage, really, and you feel like you've hit a rut or you're not enjoying what you want to do, for example, you're just kind of indifferent and just kind of going about it, and you're unsure how to switch from where you are. Hopefully, that's some. And what we discuss, you can kind of see like, oh, maybe I can do it this way.
So to summarize, you're not telling people what path is the right path, but your plan is to provide people with options and different opinions on how you can either shift your focus or move into a position that you want to move into, or just navigate through that career student environment pretty much, because that's what it seems like to me. It's just you're providing tools to allow students to look at things more broadly, I guess.
Yeah, students and even people that are already professionals.
Sure,
And it's not. And there's gonna be different avenues that I take. Some of it is gonna be that, and I'm sure there will be some stuff that kind of branch off slightly, but it's essentially really all gonna revolve around education and career. And by education, I don't mean necessarily coursework, but just that experience of it and how to optimize it and how to best optimize it and leave there ideally either with a job or in a position where you have like interviews lined up, something where you're not because there's so many people that, whether it be because they just opted not to do anything, they ended up graduating with nothing lined up, or people that legitimately tried but they just don't have anything, and like nothing's even, because there was a period of time I didn't get my job until, I was so fortunate. I got my job a couple months into my senior year. So I got my job in October. I graduated in April. So that, what is that, 6 months, whatever that period of time, I already knew what I was doing when I graduated, which is what I wanted. I wanted to I wanted to have my job lined up just for that peace of mind. But leading up to that, I had so many interviews, some of which, even looking back, I felt I did well on, and some of which at the time I thought I did well on it. But now looking back, I'm like, well, you did really poorly. But that entire experience led me to me ultimately getting my job, like me learning from everything and then me using different resources, because I didn't do the same thing for each interview. With each mess up and each interview that I didn't get it, each time the door got slammed on me, I made adjustments.
Right.
So that's also part of what I want to do, is like me sharing, and everyone else that I speak with sharing how it worked for them. And then again, people that are listening kind of see what resonates with them, because as each person will have a different approach, and there's going to be some parts that intertwine, and then that's usually something that can be taken away and applied to more people broadly.
Are you familiar at all with any like real world HR stats? I mean, is that something that you would be able to talk about off the top of your head? No.
But that's something that I'd want to have ready, just so it's not strictly anecdotal, because I think.
Oh, I was about to get into an anecdote right now, because it's curious. Like, I'm almost wondering how receptive today's youth, let's say. I mean, because we're young too, but let's say like even younger than us, right? I'm almost wondering how receptive they're going to be to, any form of just guidance, I guess. Because I've heard horror stories, man. Like one of my friends was telling me his girlfriend has worked at a few startups, and she does HR, and just the stuff that she says, she's in hiring and firing too. So she's running interviews and dealing with these people post interview, and apparently they'll blow you off. They'll say the dumbest things on the phone, and it's just this complete lack of common sense that I feel like makes no sense. Like how are you that unaware of what you're doing right now? You're trying to get a job, right? Yeah. So how do you just completely blow off your interviewer, or not have any respect at all for that process, man, and then like get upset when they didn't get me the job, or like, come on, like it doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? Like what's going on here? Like I'm curious, man. Like it's great that you're doing this, but like,
Are people gonna listen?
are
Is it
these
gonna
are
click?
these upcoming generations going to find value in this? Like, I'm sure there will be people, absolutely,
Hmm.
because there's no question about it. But I don't know. What do you like? What do you think? What do you think's happening with just that general trajectory of
Well, in regards to will it resonate? I mean, we'll see.
yeah,
That I mean, I don't want it. I don't want it to be too rigid because I have that in mind. Because even I'll think about myself like, okay, let's say I was someone like today. I'm looking for something like that, some kind of thing to kind of help me steer my career. Or I'm in college right now, struggling. Is there like I like listening to podcasts? Is there something that I can find that kind of helps? For me, if I hear something that's very structured, not even necessarily structured, but just it seems very stiff and very formal and kind of not really laxed, I might not.
step one.
Yeah, yeah, something
Yeah.
like that. And it seems like overly formal, like very, you know, for
Write
me,
your
I might
resume.
not care for. And I think for the most part, college students are not all necessarily like wired that way, where they're like, I want it A to Z, very, very formal. Like they want a little bit of, they want to be able to relate, you know? So,
Yeah.
so I would hope that works. And frankly, if it's a small amount of people that it works for, great. Ultimately, the objective is to help someone.
So what led to this? What led to this idea?
So I've been thinking about it, not to this extent, but I've had this idea in my head like a year ish, maybe a little less than a year, where initially it wasn't a podcast. Initially it was like essentially I'd be like a consultant type of thing. I don't want it to sound pretentious, but essentially I'd be essentially consulting with what I'm about to explain, where I'd have high school students like juniors, seniors probably, or if it's someone very proactive, maybe even younger than that. And if the for the high schoolers, probably their parents too, and then college students at any level. And essentially would be me helping them. So for the college students, would be helping with resume prep, interview prep, questions to prepare for based on whatever the field is. So since I did something in business, I would probably be more like I can't help an engineering student with like engineering specific type of questions, but general interviewing I can kind of help with anyone. But it would be essentially helping people prepare for interviews and then also have them know what kind of questions to ask the interviewer because when an interview's after you're done being asked the questions, each interview I've been to, they open the floor like, okay, do you have any questions for us? And if you say no, I'm good, it looks weird because it's like you have nothing. There's nothing you want to ask us. So
How much do you pay? Damn it!
yeah,
Give me money.
yeah. So that's essentially what I was. That's where this idea started, like kind of helping people just take control and prepare themselves as best possible to succeed in school. So you don't leave school thinking, school sucked. Because there's things about school that suck. There's professors that suck, assignments that suck, students that suck in a group. So I don't want it to be where you just leave because I was like that my freshman year, my first semester. I'm like, I hate school. I don't want to do this. But I ended up leaving like, oh, I'm glad I did this. It's not even necessarily because now with what I'm doing with work, it's not like, man, everything I learned there has helped me so much with my work. Not really. For me specifically, like everything I've learned right now and what I'm working has happened because I'm doing it at work. But the schooling, it helped and has helped me prepared of how to be professional to get there. That's what if I just like kind of showed up, I wouldn't be as in as good a position as I feel I am currently. But that's how that started. Because I was thinking, I don't know why I started thinking about it. I don't like I can't pinpoint what it was that I was thinking about where I was like, maybe this is something that I could help with. I think it was just I started noticing that I was talking to people a lot about their work. Like when I used to work at Goodyear, and at Goodyear, I had scheduled. I would after being there a couple months, I started scheduling like one-on-one sit-downs with people of different positions in the company, like from finance manager, people my level, directors. I even had a sit down with our CFO once. And what was cool about Goodyear was they were all very accessible. Not I don't mean like I would ping them and immediately be like, yeah, come over. But there was no one that said, no, I'm not willing to meet with you. They would be like, yeah, just take a look at my calendar, see what's available, and let's schedule it. So I think it started there where I started talking because I was doing that with the intention of one to kind of put my face out there so people know who I am, and two, to again understand how did they get to where they are. So obviously they probably did something right if they're at that level.
So you would schedule just to meet and pick their brains,
Mhm.
or like that's all you would do?
Mhm.
Like, how would you approach that? Would you just tell them that?
Yeah, I
straight
would.
up?
So we had an org chart.
A
So
what?
an organization chart.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So each, and then it would all lead up to our CEO. So you would kind of go
It's like
down.
a family tree.
Yeah, pretty much. So I kind of would work my way up like that, and I would look at specifically in. I started specifically in finance, and I wanted to get into other fields. I don't think I got to it because I ended up leaving the company, but I did meet with various people. So essentially, I was like, okay, I wouldn't just show up to the room and be like, hey, so what's going on? I would have like a list of questions ready because it was usually 30 minutes at most because they're, especially as the higher level they got, they're busier they are. So I would just have a few questions ready, and it was typically the same stuff for the most part. And depending on what position they were and which line of business they were in, I would sometimes have something a little more specific if there was something that I was just curious about. But for the most part, it would be like, how long have you been here? If I didn't already know, like, what positions have you had here? Outside of here, like, where were you working before? What is it about this company that you like? And what have you done that's gotten you here? Like, and if they were a position where they had people reporting to them, I would ask essentially, like, the one thing I feel like I asked pretty often was, so at your position, you have people reporting to. Those of the ones that report to you that are like superstars, what characteristics do they have that separate themselves from others that aren't necessarily bad, but just aren't nearly as good as them? So hearing that kind of feedback was cool because then I'd be like, okay. And there was always some kind of commonality with each answer. It was usually like the resiliency, always going above and beyond, like just answers that are like stereotypical.
Boilerplate.
But there's a reason all of them say that. It's just because that's really what it is.
What was the this got me interested. What was the reaction they had for you? So, because that's kind of weird, right? Like you're calling up your boss basically, and you're like, "Hey, I just want to ask you questions." I'm like, what do you mean? Like, well, I want to know more about you and how you got here and all that. Like, did anybody comment on that? Like,
No. Like in terms of like why?
yeah, just hey, like why did you do this? Like,
No.
why did you?
No one.
That is so fascinating, man. That would have been the first question out of my mouth. I would have answered your questions and then gone, okay, so what's going on here, man? Like, talk to me.
So no one asked me, like, even after accepting. No one asked me that. I'm trying to remember if there was any additional commentary. Not that I can remember off the top of my head, but I think the reason there wasn't the "why are you doing this" is, I think I was talking to your brother about this. Is people, I think if someone likes what they do, they will happily discuss what they do for work. So these people, at least whoever I had spoken to, seemed like they enjoyed what they did. So they were very open with what they were discussing. It's not like I was asking for anything confidential. It was just simply, how'd you kind of get here? Like general type of questions. And there wasn't really anyone that I can tell you that I felt like I was pulling teeth. Like I would just ask a question and they would just go off. Sometimes I would only get to like 2 questions because like one question just had such a long answer, and it was great. It was very informative. But I think that's essentially why I didn't get this. So what the hell's going on here? It was just because it's like, oh yeah, and it's also
They
for
got
them,
into
too.
it.
Yeah, and it's also
Yeah.
like a little change of pace too, especially when again you're at that level. I feel like it's just they're always so zoomed in and focused on something, and so fixated on it. And then it's like a small change for 30 minutes. It's like let's just shift off that and kind of remind you why you're doing that. I think I might be wrong, but I feel like for me, I kind of think of it like that. It's like, oh, this random person I haven't heard of, but they know of me and they kind of want to pick my brain, because I would look at it like, oh, maybe they were trying to get something out of it in terms of I want to become successful too. So
Right.
what worked for you? So
Well, I mean, it's just
I think that's why.
I would assume that something like that is unprecedented, almost like, in a corporate structure to have an employee just kind of. I've never heard of it. This is like, this is new for me.
I'm
yeah.
trying to think of anyone.
Well, here was this something you just inherently wanted to do, or did you pick up on this? Let's call it a strategy, for lack of a better term, from somewhere else.
No, I just decided I'm
Just
gonna do it.
In and of your,
Mhm.
dude, kudos, man.
Yeah, I mean, it was really helpful. So it was because I'm trying to remember if anyone else even like because I wasn't just like a random employee. I was part of a group that got into Goodyear. Like we were a development program, so we kind of had a little more focus on us as opposed to just a random person that cold applied online and got a job,
Got
for
it.
example. Because we were recruited out of college. There was 6 of us in my class, so I think that may have, I don't know if it played a factor, but may have been part of why maybe they were a little more receptive to speaking with me because they're like, oh, we know he's part of the program. Because,
You were vetted basically
yeah,
to a certain
because
extent.
the company's objective in having people come through that program is to ultimately, at some point, ideally be in a leadership role. Not
Right.
necessarily in 1 or 2 years, but ideally you stay there 10, 15 years and you, because I remember one of the people I spoke to, and this is how I learned about it. I think I was asking like, oh, how long have you been here? She's like, I've been here my entire career. Like I've only worked here. It's like I graduated from college and I was the first person, the program you're in now, I was the first class of that program. And she was director of I forget which finance group, but so that was pretty cool. I'm like, wow, so you've only worked here? She's like, yeah.
That isn't that kind of culture dying out nowadays? Because
Yeah,
I remember,
definitely.
like, even when I still held a 9 to 5, it seemed like it was on the downtrend. You know, like the whole concept was now you would stay somewhere for a year, 2 years, move horizontally.
Mm-hmm.
You know, instant pay raise, do the same thing, 1 year,
Yeah.
2 year, boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's not like it's not the era of stick with the company for your entire career and get a gold watch at the
Right.
end
Yeah.
with your pension.
Well, whose fault do you think that is? Do you think it's sort of, maybe fault's a harsh word. Why do you think we've sort of transitioned into that kind of environment? I mean, obviously corporations can be horrible to their employees, but
Mhm.
they can also be amazing to their employees, and vice versa. Employees can be shitty people
Yeah.
to work or to have work for you, and vice versa. You could get, superstars out of the group. So it's just fascinating to me, like, why we shifted towards that. I mean, do you have any insight?
I don't have anything. Again, it's gonna be just anecdotal, just something that I would guess. I
Well,
don't
that's
have
fine. I
any.
mean, we're just
Yeah,
we're just talking right now.
my guess would be so the shift that you're saying. I think it's a cultural thing. So I think, and this could be a stretch, but I connect it to kind of everything now being in like soundbite form, and everything that we consume is more shortened, and we kind of more like. I think it's just people aren't as patient to stay that long and see their career develop. Because for example, me right now where I'm working, this is the longest I've stayed at any one place since I've graduated college. Prior to college, I only worked at 2 places. During high school, I worked at a movie theater for 2 years. As soon as I left that job because I got my job at the bank, and I worked there for 2 years, and then I left, went to school. I had an internship throughout school, and then once I graduated, I worked at Goodyear for less than a year. Then I worked somewhere else for like less than a couple months, and then I worked somewhere else for less than a year, and now I'm working here. And part of it was there was some personal stuff involved with some of the moves, but also it's just you get better opportunities at some point, and it's to the point where it doesn't make sense to capitalize on it. So part of it, I think, is like the generation that's coming up are more like they might just kind of get bored, and that's just a guess. I think that might be part of it. Is just like, okay, it's been 6 months, I'm here, tired of it, I want to move on. But the other thing is that I've noticed, and this is again directly what's happened to me. Like I'm trying to remember when this started. I think the job I had prior to this, I would have people, because I have a LinkedIn, and I would have recruiters like staffing agencies reach out to me while I'm working at this other place saying, hey, we got this job. Would you be interested? And then once you get inundated with enough of these, it's like, it's enticing and to just entertain the offer and see what it is.
Right.
So when you finally bite on one and they pitch it to you, it's like, wait, I'm getting paid how much more? Oh, and it's closer to my house, and I'm getting paid more, and this is what I'm going to be doing. It's like, okay, I'll do the interview. So that's at least for me, that's another reason.
Right.
Like where I'm working now, I'm enjoying it, and I'm not actively looking anywhere else. But I still have recruiters reach out to me, like staffing agents, I should say. Like I would say at least once a week, I'm getting one person. Sometimes I get like in a day, I'll get 3 just randomly, and they'll be like, hey, we have this. And then sometimes it's not, they'll ask me, they'll be like, are you interested? And if you're not, do you know anyone that would be?
Of
So I think
course.
that's the other element of it is those types of companies. But, these companies aren't really new per se. So I don't know why necessarily it's changing
It's
now.
probably the internet. That's probably what did it, because it made it easier for them to connect with people. It made it easier for them to make their their brokerage off that. I mean, that's my guess, is the internet just kind of propelled that into overdrive, where they're like, oh shit, dude, we now have 100 million people on Facebook, go, 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 or LinkedIn or whatever,
And just financially speaking, it makes no sense to stay at any one place.
Well, let me segue into a
For the most
related question. Let's say money wasn't an issue. Obviously, it's an issue for everybody, but there was a time, and I think for some people, there still is this concept of, let me work at this company and climb that corporate ladder and become CFO, become CTO, eventually join the board. Like, do you think that that's still something that's a path of progression that's still viable for, let's say people coming out of college today? Or do you think that time and day is dead and gone? And
I would say it's not going to be common. Is it viable? It's an option, definitely, but it's like if it's what you want to do, if you're like, I want to find a place where I ideally, like, if the first place I get out of college, I really like that place, then I want to stay there. Like, if you approach it that way, I'm not saying that just because you have that approach, you'll get to the CFO, CEO, whatever, but I think as long as you have that drive and you have the abilities to do it, you'll be able to maneuver your way to some type of higher position. It's just, I don't think people necessarily want to do that.
well, it's a lot of work, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and you're saying if you're taking the finances outside of it, right? Like if you exclude,
Well, yeah. Well, I mean,
consider finance.
if you considered finance, I mean, they're just
Yeah.
gonna give you a 3% raise and tell you to
yeah,
do your job. You know what I mean?
I mean, if you're in a good spot, again, and the money's not a concern. If you're in a good spot, then I guess I would change my tune. Like for me, I ideally would like to stay at one place.
right.
For me personally, that's what I would like to do. Like I wouldn't necessarily want to, unless I move, like my family moves or I get married or something or whatever. I decide, you know what, I'm done with this place. I'm gonna go move somewhere else. Then obviously, yeah. But otherwise, like if I know I'm gonna be in this one area my entire life for the next X amount of years, I would prefer to stay at one place, because the other thing is when you leave somewhere, you have to then kind of you're starting in a place brand new, so you're readjusting to a new
Right.
culture if it's different. You're adjusting to possibly new systems, new processes. So all of that, and it's like, how often do you want to do that? Some people might be okay with it. I would rather just stay one place and really become an expert on each process. So when other people come in, it's like, okay, yeah, let me show you. But at the same time, it doesn't benefit me financially, and that's obviously a big part of it
Yeah,
too.
of course.
There's some people, but there's people that I've worked with that have this was pretty common at Goodyear. There was a lot of people that had been there like decades. But I think again, part of that was just the time that it was then. It was more commonplace to stay in one place because obviously since they've been there decades, they're older people. But even outside of there, I've worked with other people that have been in one place, and I think part of it is just, for example, they get married, let's say, they have a family and they live near where they work. So they have their routine. They always go in at this time, they leave at this time. They're making enough money where they're comfortable enough, and maybe they have a spouse or whatever their situation is. They're comfortable enough with the situation. They're like, yeah, I'm fine with this one position.
There's also like huge risk once you're talking about kids and
Yeah, exactly.
properties and stuff. Like you can't take risks like you can right now.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's why, again, given how it is now, it's best to do that.
So you're fishing pretty much. You're trying to find the best opportunity out there for you until such time as you're ready to settle down. It seems.
Yeah,
like.
because after a certain time, like those offers just stop coming.
Well, you hit a certain age threshold, and suddenly
honestly,
the
that
recruiter's
is
like, nope.
Yeah, like I know during the interview process they say there's no discrimination, but frankly, I think age-wise there is. Like I know people that are qualified for roles, but they just hear from nowhere, and part of it I think is because they're older. And I'm not even saying like 70. I'm saying like 40 something. And
I know somebody like that.
yeah, and it's not like everyone that's over 40 is not going to be able to get a job. That's not what I'm saying. But there are enough people that I've spoken to and that I know that are struggling when I know their work history, I know their abilities, but they just won't even get a shot at even an interview, let's say. And I think part of it is that. So I think that's why it's like take advantage while they're still wanting you. And then eventually once you find a place where you're like, you know what, I'm cool with the money. I'm cool now making this much more currently because I really like this place. The culture is great. I like my job. My boss is awesome. I'm good with the commute. Everything checks. Just stay there then.
Do you think that there's going to be a point at which suddenly automation really takes off and a lot of the rat race that college students are engaging in now is going to end or dry up, and we're going to be in a situation where it's not even a concern anymore? I mean, do you see a future like that anytime soon?
With what not being a concern?
With just generally having certain positions being automated out. Like, what was it? This was over a year ago. I was reading about the courts. Certain courts are looking at using AI to pretty much eliminate the first portion of a clerk's job, which is to check the documents submitted to the court for accuracy.
Mhm.
Because if it's not filled out right, or if you're missing stuff or whatever, it's immediately thrown out, right? Because I can't accept this.
Right.
So the way it is now is that these clerks have to go through all of that stuff one by one by one by one by one, checking all of it. When an AI or whatever other machine system can do that same work way faster, clear up the schedule for the clerk to now, deal with a human being or do whatever else the court requires them to do. So I guess what I'm getting at is like it's obvious that a lot of jobs that we sort of have now and take for granted are going to go the way of the dodo. There's no question about it, right? I guess what I'm getting at is, do you think that there's going to be the same level of damn it, I've completely forgot what I asked you. Do you think that the automation is going to end up killing off sort of this thing that we're seeing right now with like employment? And
I think certain roles, yes. And like, for example, that example you gave, yeah, cashiers, for example, we're seeing like at even fast food chains, even at retail banks, we're seeing more of the ATM that does everything. It gives more denominations now. It's not just the 20s and hundreds or whatever. So I think certain roles, yes, it's happening now. Certain roles, still yes, but maybe later. But I feel like just intuitively, I would think a job that you have a degree for will not necessarily be first to go. Again, unless like you graduate and you still end up working like as a cashier or something, that's different. But I feel like, for example, I'll take what I know in finance. Okay, you graduate with a finance degree, you start as a financial analyst. I don't think that analyst role is going away yet. It might, because again, I don't even know how any of that stuff works. So for me, having no knowledge, like I don't know, can you program something to do that work? Maybe you can even do that now, and it's just not widespread enough. I don't know. So at some point, yeah, these things might start becoming obsolete. When that is, I don't know. But it's something that was already discussed before. Once computers kind of became more prominent and things started becoming more automized, people were saying, oh, people are going to be out of jobs. So many people aren't going to be able to be working this, that. And we sort of are seeing it, but someone's got to maintain those things though. So that's a human behind the machine ultimately. So it's like not all jobs are getting eliminated necessarily.
But not all people could be programmers either.
Yeah,
so
that's true. Yeah, and I'm now suggesting, well, that guy will just leave and he'll go behind the machine and he'll start tweaking it. But I don't think it's necessarily a lot of people are going to be out, at least not yet. Maybe at some point we get there. When that is, I don't know. But in the short term, I don't anticipate that being a thing, at least not yet.
So
from my limited knowledge,
you should still study and make
I
sure
would
that.
say.
Yeah.
Well, either way, you're gonna like it's like if you don't know, then it's like it's like if you're worried, oh man, what if I have a job that's gonna think, it's like, all right, then just study to fix that, to keep the update the machine. Then I don't know what to tell you at that point.
Do you think that let's say you're born, right? You hit a certain age, you hit 18, whatever. Like, do you think that everybody has the potential to do anything,
No.
or do you think that you are hardwired for certain things? Like, I'm wired to work well with computers and figure electronics out, but I suck at like, basketball or forget sports. I suck at, let's say, numbers, right? Like,
I think I may have prematurely answered. I think if it's something that let's say you're initially not good at, but if it's something that you legitimately are interested in and want to become good at it, I think you can. For example, so I started as a financial analyst, and then when I was looking to become a senior, I was looking at job roles, responsibilities, and requirements, and I started to notice from when I first started looking, which was like 2-3 years ago, to when I was most recently looking, like as of like a year, like, so let's say like from 3 years ago to 1 year ago, I noticed a shift in job descriptions. Same position, but I started to notice as of a year ago, a lot more of those same positions were now asking for coding to know certain languages.
okay.
Whereas opposed to a few years ago, I rarely saw that. So I saw that, I'm like, okay, so let me try and mold myself to kind of be more of a newer version of this analyst role. So let me try and learn some of these languages that I'm seeing a lot of. So I was seeing a lot of Python, saw R here and there. Off the top of my head, those are the ones I remember. But I was seeing, and SQL, SQL, I think I was seeing the most. So I was like, okay, let me maybe start putting these into my repertoire so that next place I want to go, if it asks again, I already have a foot ahead of other people, because I feel like a lot of people don't have that knowledge specifically for like these roles that I'm saying, for like financial analysts. There are some I'm sure that have it, but I think for the most part, people might be looking at it as like, well, what the hell, when did this thing come up? And I bring that up because, so I've tried several times. I've gotten books. I've done like Code Academy. I've looked up YouTube videos. I've like gone on Reddit to try and like ask questions on what's the best way to kind of start doing this. And I still haven't done it. Like, I've done the initial steps. I've done some courses, but it just doesn't interest me whatsoever. So I don't think it's like it's an incapability on my end. It's just I don't find it interesting. But at some point, it's like, can I force the screw? Can I force the square into the circle and just jam it in? Maybe. Maybe. I don't know. But as of now,
break the box, man.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
But it's like, I think that's part of it. It's like, so if it's something that's like, because for example, like I'm thinking of like what I'm doing now. I don't know if I was born into it, because I'm not sure how much of that I prescribe to, but I feel like for a fair amount of time, at least as far back as I can remember, I've always been like decent with numbers, like off the top of my head, like doing math quickly, stuff like that, which isn't necessarily what translates to what I'm doing now. But just that type of working with numbers, like I've always been interested in like statistics, because I always watched sports. I was always interested like who's putting up what numbers in what situations, how do they shoot in this instance, what's their percentages here, there, all that always fascinated me. And there's some people that like I couldn't care less.
That's me.
Yeah. So I think part of it is just whatever that is. I don't know, maybe it is you're born into it. I don't know what the actual thing is. I think part of it is that, but also there's people that start in one thing and then they'll pivot and go into something else. And I think those that do that successfully are able to that because whatever they pivot to is something that they are interested in and had the drive. So I think it's really drive and interest. If you're someone that will work and put your nose to the grindstone, and it's something that you're like, I'm someone that works, but if I don't care for the thing, why am I working?
Right.
So if you have those two things, I think yeah, you can do that. But you gotta have, I think, both. And again, yeah, maybe you can force your way to it. Like I'm sure I can learn those languages if I really sit down and do it, and maybe I'll like it at some point. But from what I've done, I'm like, oh, this is just boring. I don't care for this.
Worst case, I mean, you could just become a podcaster and
and I won't even have to worry about it.
That's it, man. Problem solved.
They won't automate me out of it.
you never know, man.
Yeah, maybe. They'll make one of those holograms and they'll be like, just
yeah.
study him for like 2 episodes, get the get the cadence, everything, and just throw him in there. He'll figure
It's
it
like
out.
those deep fakes that they've
Yeah,
got, man.
those are weird. Yeah,
Yeah, and that's it. You're done. Your
hmm
job's over. It's
maybe
horrible, man.
possible. Yeah, that's kind of how I look at that.
Oh man, it's interesting times we're living in. But in any case, like I think you're planning on doing something that's going to provide value to some people. I don't want to
Hopefully,
say a lot because I personally don't have faith in today's youngsters, but that's not on them, that's on me, right?
yeah, yeah, maybe.
But
I
it's
mean,
unfortunate, man. Like I think that there's really this lack of giving a shit,
well, that's part of what I would
you
hope
know.
to be able to deter from occurring. It's like if you're, because again, I was there, but I didn't have like a person that steered me straight. I just ended up, I don't know how, I just ended up doing it. So it would have helped, and part of that was my fault. Was like I never really went to them like, hey, help me out. Like I have older sisters, but I never really approached them saying like, hey, I don't want to do this crap anymore. What would you do? Like I just internalized it and ended up working out. Ultimately, it worked out however it did, and I'm glad it went through the way it did. But at the same time, it could have been easier. Yeah, the struggle was part of it, but if I can give someone an upper hand, you're still gonna struggle anyway. But if I
Yeah.
can get you out of that initial thing, it's like go struggle in a different way, and then learn from that whatever other way, but at least get a foot ahead. Then yeah, I'd want to do that. So it's like if you're someone that doesn't care, but somehow you stumble upon what I'm talking about, or the person, whoever my guess is, what they're talking about, and something clicks. Somehow all these things align. Great. Maybe it's a small chance, and that's fine. But as long as there's some people that take something away from it and it benefits them, or if I end up doing the other thing where I was saying like the consulting type stuff, if there again there's people that benefit from it, awesome. That's ultimately the goal. It's not like let's make this into this gigantic thing where I'm just raking in money. It's like no, I don't even necessarily see that being the case. It's just more I'm looking at a smaller scale. It's like if I talk about stuff or whoever I'm talking to talks about something, and that person's wherever they are listening are like, holy crap, that might actually work for me. Fantastic. That's
You're
ultimately what
seeing a
we're
hole
about.
and you're trying to plug it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much. So if all that works out, then it's worth it. It's because and I even know of places that kind of do the consulting thing that I'm saying. So that again, I'm like I don't think I'm reinventing the wheel in any of this stuff, but it's just some voices click better with others for whatever reason. I
I
don't
mean,
know.
on that note, I am curious about another thing. I was going to ask you earlier, but we kind of went off topic. This is for sure. I mean, I'm convinced of this. I don't need to verify because I know for a fact that this is like a uniquely sort of, I think, Western mentality, like American, European, like you look at kids that go to school in Japan or, anywhere in Asia really that has a rigorous school program.
Mhm.
They go into prep schools to see which high school they're going to get accepted to. They get accepted into high school.
Hmm.
It's not like here where it's
Just
like,
show
oh,
up.
yeah, you're at zip code 90013. Oh, well,
That's
you're
the
over
school you
there. Yeah. It doesn't work like that over there. You literally have to apply, and the school has to be like, okay, fine, you can come to this school. That's crazy.
Maybe the better solution.
It might be. I mean, because it seems like you're being taught right off the bat that no, this is serious. You need to take this serious. You know, you have to study for this. You're gonna have your high school entrance exam. If you don't get in, you're gonna go to a shitty high school, which I mean, by all accounts, is probably not as shitty as your parents are making it out to
Yeah.
be. Or like you think it is, but it doesn't matter because you fail that test to go to that top end
Yeah.
school. So it's fascinating, man. I think this is like a uniquely Western phenomenon because
Could be. Because there's
it's
definitely
way stricter
holes.
over there.
Yeah, there are definitely holes in from elementary, middle school, high school, and even in college. There are definitely things that could be better. Like one of the things, I don't know if you had this, like in high school, I did not have like a financial literacy course in any capacity. I'm not saying something very technical, just basic stuff. I didn't have it.
No, I didn't have anything like
Okay.
that either.
So college, I was studying finance. And then in finance, we had 3 tracks. I think we had corporate track, investment track, and a planning track. There may have been one more that I'm not remembering. So I chose planning because just looking at the classes, to be honest, I thought that was the easiest. I thought those were the easiest classes. Let me just do that. Yeah.
Tisk.
So I was like, okay, let me do that. And then each track has several courses. You don't have to take all of them. I think you had to take like 3 of them or something. So one of them that I took was a personal finance class, because I looked at it, I'm like, this, I might be able to take something away from this, because to that point I felt pretty responsible with my own money. Like I wasn't just blowing it off, but I was like, again, maybe there's something I learned for investing. I don't know, something. And I'm glad I took that class because I did learn a good amount. And I remember, I think it was towards the end of the school year or at some point of the school year, my professor was saying that he was working with, I don't know if this, I hope this ended up working out. But I remember him saying he was working with the dean for finance to make that course mandatory for everyone in the school, not just finance majors taking the planning track, but any student.
As part of the G,
yes,
basically.
like you have to take this class. So that's just a small example that I'm taking, but like something like that I think would help, because a lot of people, it blows my mind how many people don't know kind of simple stuff with like personal finance, like how do credit cards work, I get charged interest.
That's
like,
the kind of thing I feel like you
that.
shouldn't even, you should know that before you enter high school.
Whatever the time period is, I think even in high school is fine, because you're not gonna be in a position to utilize those things.
Yeah, but you're gonna be with your parents, your entire life. They're gonna be using credit cards, I'm sure. Like, it would be insane not to know the process. Like, hey, Mom, what's that? Oh, this is a credit card. What does that do? It's free money. Like, come on, man. Like, you should be taught way earlier, I think, because
whatever point is determined.
Sorry, I didn't mean,
fit.
I didn't mean to go off on an angry rant about like, I mean, because if I can go on a rant.
Yeah. Well, whatever it seems like an appropriate age. I think it's something that is one example of something that I think would help. So like maybe that's like a small hole that could maybe be filled.
I think
if you had
civics
like
is another thing that needs to be taught desperately, man.
Yeah. Again, like if these things are kind of looked at, it could, and then that's, I think, and I didn't know that about them, like having to essentially get into high school, not just
they have entrance exams.
Because then that kind of it makes you bust your ass a little bit. So I think that's something that, I mean, I don't know how it would be applied here, so I'm not going to even delve into it. But yeah, there's definitely, like, I'm not saying it worked out for me, so it's definitely, even if someone listens and like, no, I'm not going to go to school, but that's actually something pretty cool that person said, or whatever. I'm not saying you have to go to school, because there's plenty of people that didn't go to school and things worked out fine. That's not what I'm advocating. The point isn't graduate, go to a 4-year program, and then get your master's, and then get your PhD, and then no. Because that's honestly part of the point, is like not everyone has a straight line path. Yeah. There's no such thing. And I remember I was told that several times by different people, and I was like, you're all saying the same thing. I don't know, maybe there is. No. Almost immediately I was like, okay, this is what and immediately it went off track. Like I came in with sports management, I'm like, all right, this is what I'm going to be doing. 2 weeks later, I'm like, okay, I'm already taking a detour here, and let's see where this leads. So it's not the same thing isn't going to work for everyone. For some people, that college process is the best way to go. For some people, it's not the best way to go. It depends who they are as a person, what kind of learning works for them, what they want to do. If someone that's kind of has that entrepreneurship ability, interest, then they might not need it.
Right.
But obviously, if it's like, oh, I'm going to be a doctor, you can't just obviously. So it just depends on whoever the listener is, whatever works. Again, I'm not necessarily telling people what to do. It's just, I did this. This worked for me. I have this person in front of me. This is what they do. This is what they've seen. If it's like the someone in HR, for example, it's like, I've dealt with a bunch of crazy people, and I've also seen a bunch of people that it works out really well for. Let me tell you what the difference was between them. Or let me tell you what the best thing I heard was and the worst thing I heard was, and where they are now. Something like that. Again, you don't have to be going to school to take something positive, to take some kind of information from that and apply.
I mean, it's just, you're just having interesting conversations, man. I'm sure these people have stories to tell, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly. And then in addition to it helping people, it'll help me too, because I'll be like, oh man, that's crazy. That's actually pretty cool, or that's something that I hadn't thought of. Maybe that'll work for me.
Yeah.
So I'll be learning plenty from it all too.
Well, man, I hope we could get this thing off the ground soon.
Me too.
And get you back on it here and talking
With
about
an update or something.
Yeah, talking about the post-launch
Yeah.
news.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Awesome, man. It's glad to have you on then.
Thanks.